Welcome to The Kingstonian, a podcast that profiles individuals who are passionate about what they do for a living, about what organization they belong to, or simply passionate about the community they are a part of. Hello there, and welcome. My name is Dave Cunningham. This is another in our profiles of some of the women in town who love to create their own music and share it with us. Our guest in this episode has been singing for a long time and continues to experiment with her art. Here is our conversation with Chantal Thompson. Chantal, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Dave. Glad to be here.
It's been a while getting this particular conversation organized.
I know. I'm sorry. My schedule's kind of all over the place.
Well, that's what I wanted to start with. There's several areas that I'd like to cover in terms of your career. Right. But a few of the people that I've interviewed on this program are singers, musicians, and some of them have been doing this around town for a long time. And I want to talk about your passion for singing. Where does that come from? How do you sustain that, having done it for so long?
Right. Good question. Well, I think probably the passion for music in general started in my home as a child. My father's got a huge record collection, and you know him, Chantal Thompson. He's a radio personality, and there was always music playing at home. And before I could barely crawl, I was putting vinyl on the old 70s stereo, and it was a passion of mine. And it listening to vinyl, I mean, there's nothing like it. I still do it now. Mm-hmm. But I think that's probably where it started. I wasn't going to mention your dad, but this is the first father-daughter combination I've had on this program. Now, in high school, like most people, I would guess, who have some sort of talent for singing or playing instruments, you got involved with a band, right? I did, really early. Even like in high school, like grade 9, I was gigging and making money.
Really?
Playing shows just in the community halls, that sort of thing. But yeah, it happened really early. People were kind of pushing me into it. They would hear me singing and they'd say, "Well, why don't you play with these people?" And it was actually, I couldn't avoid it. I was just falling into these bands all the time, and then we seemed to have gigs. And back then, live music was everywhere. Mm-hmm. And
what kind of music were you playing back then, or singing back then?
Well, it was more pop and some Canadiana,
mm-hmm.
so folk, pop, blues.
Covers of whatever was popular at the time?
Covers, but I was also writing, too. We actually won, our grade 9 band won a high school songwriting contest.
Really?
And we were on the radio. Students Against Drunk Driving. We wrote a song. So that was, we won a bunch of contests. And then after that, I won a songwriting contest that I think the Tragically Hip, some of their members were judging. And they were actually quite integral in helping me get my first real gigs. They gave us a lot of advice because they were the big rock stars back then. Telling us that, copyright, I think this might have been before SOCAN, you had to mail your material, your tape back to yourself, and that was the way that you could copyright your material. So they were the ones that initiated me into the profession.
Mm-hmm.
So they're quite generous that way.
Now, there's a couple of bands that you've been involved with, and I've seen some little write-ups about these particular bands. The first one is Joyy. Tell us about that particular group and how it came to be. Well,
another famous Kingstonian that started that band, Joe Chithlin, and we have Joe's Mill here, the musical instrument lending library, in his honor, since he passed away quite early. Because he believed that all children should have an opportunity to play music, whether they could afford to or not. So in his honor, because he was so well-loved and such an amazing musician and community supporter, they developed this Joe's Mill musical instrument lending library. So anyway, Joyy That's Joe's Orchestra of Yelling Yahoos, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly. We had a regular Monday night gig at the Toucan for like 3 years running, and it was just packed. And we played a lot of R&B and soul and blues, lots of Etta James, Aretha Franklin, some obscure, like Joe had this great collection of obscure all-female rock bands from the 70s that I wish I could still get my hands on, And so we would cover some of their material. We wrote some material and had some stuff played on the radio, and we traveled to Russia.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
in 92. It's kind of an interesting time, perestroika, when communism was kind of lots of change economically, and people waiting in long lineups for bread, and mafia kind of running. They didn't really have venues that were not kind of government-sponsored venues, so they were starting to open up these basements to try to like create these bars that America had, and so they brought us over to kind of I don't know, just to hear what we were doing. Like some people there had never heard R&B and soul, so they just came out to see what we were wearing and what we were doing, and it was interesting. It was we were on the Russian trains, and it was pretty risky, actually. When I think back,
I would think so. It was an unstable time, I would
it
guess.
was very unstable. Good time for
But
rock
you
and
went
roll,
anyway.
right? That's what it's all about. We're used to that. Artists are used to instability. We were fine.
This is true. And some of them never get over it.
No, I know, and it's what can you do? I mean, it's money or art a lot of the time, and sometimes you're lucky, and these things combine, But
I have a question on that coming up in a bit, but Directions is another band.
Yeah. When I moved to Toronto, and I went to OCAD, I went to an art school. And that was after I was here at Queen's. Actually, so I went to Queen's here. I got my BA in philosophy. And then I just a few years ago, I got my teacher's degree here as well. So I am an alumni of Queen's. But yeah, I went off to Toronto and I went to OCAD, did an art degree. And part of that was performance art. And I was kind of experimenting with music, different approaches. Some musicians, Benji Prosen and Jason Kennemy, that I knew in Kingston, had moved to Toronto, and we thought we'd get together and created this 7-piece fusion band based on the music of Miles Davis, his Bitches Brew era, sort of modal jazz, but also mixed with some of the like Sade, kind of a soulful. So it was all original material, and we became actually quite popular in Toronto. DJ started remixing our stuff, and so we had we played the Montreal Jazz Festival, and we had a little label in the UK, and we sold a lot of vinyl in Japan and England, and then we went over to England and played a really nice gig at the Jazz Cafe in London, England. We had a sold-out show, and we were on pick of the London Times, and so Directions had a nice little career because we were a jazz band, but we were also popular in the dance music venues because of all the DJ remixes. So, and I still have some songs that are re-released like through other DJs in England that have that keep playing, that they do remixes, and I still have to actually find out where the money's going for that stuff. But it's nice that they like it, and then they might get a call from me someday.
That's right.
When I get my lawyer. No.
An invoice. Yeah. For music rendered and not paid for. Was jazz something you always had an indication or leaning towards when you were doing some of the earlier gigs that you were doing?
Well, it's funny. I was trying to think back where did that start? And I think My father had some Jobim records that I remember in high school. I played constantly. So definitely the bossa nova was something that
Girl from Ipanema, yeah.
Yeah, and all of this obscure ones too. It's just the whole sound of the percussion and these kind of interesting harmonics based on these common tones and just the very sort of mellow, groovy vibe of it. I really liked. And then, as I was, like with directions, I wasn't a trained musician. And yet we were playing the Montreal Jazz Festival, and I thought, I should really figure out what I'm doing, because I was just learning by ear. Mm-hmm. So, and my songwriting was becoming maybe more with the poetry. It's a little more complex, and I think it required arrangements and things that suited that were more complex. Plus, my taste in music was international, and jazz really encompasses almost every kind of music. So that was a nice place. Plus, the performance art aspect of it, like you can really go far out with jazz. So it seemed to have everything that I liked, and so it seemed like a natural pathway to take. And so I really got my schooling when I moved to New York. I was there for about 8 years and just went to all the clubs and saw as many of the greats that I could, and hung out with a few legendary musicians that played with Chet Baker and had all these stories. And so it's a big learning curve, and it's a lifetime pursuit, which I like. And so I just trying to learn as much as I can now that I'm back in Kingston. I just recently sought out a great vocal teacher in Montreal, so I go there every Friday and just try to keep learning, try to keep improving, because there's so much to learn and so many ways to express yourself,
And it's like anything else in life. If you don't continue to learn, you stand still, and if you stand still, you're falling back.
Yeah, I mean, it's what keeps you young and fresh and present and alive and energetically, just in tune. So, yeah, everybody, it's never too late.
Go back to school. Let's get back to writing your own songs. Mm-hmm. Do you write the music of your own songs as well as the lyrics, or do you typically use a collaborator?
Well, I've done both. Mm-hmm. So years ago, I was definitely doing the music and the lyrics, and then as I got into playing with 7-piece and living in Toronto, and there's all these great musicians, I did a lot of collaborating, which is great because you share the victories and you help each other through the challenges. Now that I'm in a smaller town, there's still wonderful, amazing, world-class musicians here, but sometimes they're busy because we have a bit of a smaller pool. And so I have recently focused on taking up different instruments. So I'm learning to play. I'm playing piano more. So I've actually started to teach myself the songs that I was writing with others to play them on piano just for myself. And I'm taking guitar lessons. And I am also doing a lot of drumming, which I'm really excited about. I've been working with Rich Bannard, who is just a jazz drum master here in town. And we've actually been doing duets together with just vocals and drums, which is, interesting because this is kind of the way that humans started making music. Indigenous cultures all around the world have, this is quite a tradition. And yet, in jazz, you don't hear it very much, just vocals and drums, right? And especially vocals and drums together. So I'm playing percussion and singing at the same time. And then Rich is also playing drums. So we've been putting pieces together that way. And I've played 2 shows lately doing that. And it's been a real hit. And I've had so much fun. So now I'm exploring the rhythm perspective on music and how that affects everything. And it's huge. You know, I mean, the last few years I've been just dealing with harmony, and I mean, rhythm's been a part of it. But once you become really conscientious of rhythm, there's so much to it because life is all about the pulse of everything, right? So it's fascinating.
Here's a question for you. When you are picking a song to sing, or a song to write for that matter, do you pick it because this is a song that will please you or a song that will get you noticed?
Oh, well, I never pick a song to get me noticed. I am really anti spotlight. This is why I never post things on Facebook. I'm kind of really shy, actually, but I do want people to come to my shows.
Well.
But I don't. I usually pick songs that are, I usually try to have some challenging ones because I like to punish myself. So I'm always trying to learn something new. So I usually have something in my repertoire that's a little bit challenging so I can feel like I've accomplished something. But, it's not all about challenge. I mean, I was just reading a quote recently. I think it was Charles Mingus talked about the simplicity in Bach. And when you make things really simple, but in good simple, it can be the most beautiful. And I think he was trying to say that his compositions and Bach's compositions, when you look at the micro, it seems simple, but it's when you put all of these things together, it becomes a beautiful balanced piece. So, I'm looking for beauty. I'm looking for poetry. I'm looking for a connection that I have personally, so you're lifting the experience on the stage. You are being very present with the experience as if it's a lived one that you're feeling at the moment. And then also just the people I'm playing with. What's the arrangement? Is there piano? Is there guitar? Does this person like this kind of style? Like, is this, if I'm working with Rich, obviously the percussion's going to be important. And so I do my arrangements based on that as well, my sets.
I'm looking at it from a listener's perspective, and from what you've described, a lot of what you're doing is experimentation in the sense that you are trying new things and you are bringing new people into the mix and adding new instrumentation or rhythm or whatever the case may happen to be. From the perspective of the listener, when the listener goes to see you perform, is the listener going to do you have a label that people assign to you when they go to a show? So when you pull out something that is more experimental, by and large, do you find your audience open to what you're doing?
Well, you know what? Surprisingly, yes. And I usually get these warnings from people like, what do you want to do that for? But then, when you do it on stage, I find that actually people are interested. We have this idea that people just want to hear what they know. It's not necessarily true. And what makes live music interesting is the little element of risk, right? So when you've got the experimental music, like if you've spent enough time with it, it's never really experimental. You're pulling from your wealth of knowledge, right? So this is a little acrobatics. It's like going to the circus, But also,
there's an example here.
Yeah.
If we go to the cabaret series that Cliff Edwards does in Gananoque during the winter.
Yeah, we just did one actually. We did the Leonard Cohen tribute. Yeah.
I was there. And a lot of the times what he will do is he will take songs by well-established artists and redo those songs, generally in the style in which they were originally recorded.
Right.
So when he did the Leonard Cohen Tower of Song show, there was poetry that was read, there was different instrumentation than he would normally use. So in my mind, for him, that was an experiment.
It was.
Yeah.
And he said, what songs do you want to do? And I said, well, I'd like to try A Singer Must Die. And then everyone was like, what do you want to do that one for? That's hard. But you know what? People rise to the occasion, and it just makes it interesting. It's like, we're going to do Hallelujah. And we're going to do this really obscure piece with lots of strange harmonies, but it's actually very cool and beautiful. And you're going to walk away going, wow, I never heard that one before. You know, just give you something new along with something that's well loved and well tested, you know?
I think one of the things that I found out over the last couple of years, and I mentioned this when I was talking with someone else, is that there are an awful lot of very talented people in this area who perform.
Yes.
And I think most of us, and I'm talking about the listeners and the people who sit in the chairs, don't get out often enough to see these shows, to enjoy the performances by the people who really know what they're doing.
Yeah, I know. It's, I hope that will change. And there are lots of people that do come out and support, and it's wonderful. But I think the younger generation is maybe used to getting their stuff on the computer, and but I don't know. There's lots of reasons to come see a show live, and it's the whole community. It's the whole feeling of collectively experiencing something that makes you happy, or makes you cry, or makes you dance. You know.
Talk about making you happy. In terms of venues, when you perform, what sort of venue really works for you? Like a bar or a concert hall or a small room? Or
you know what? It depends on the kind of show with whoever I'm playing with, because each show probably requires a different kind of venue. And I also, in the small town here, you got to be careful about naming any... Yeah, I know so many bookers and stuff here too. There's a lot of cool venues. Like there's a lot of different kinds of venues in Kingston now. And I've heard someone say, well, how are we going to support all these venues? And actually, I think when you have more venues, people go out more because you just think, you feel like, wow, there's a lot going on. I better get out there and check it out. But, you know, I do like the theater. I like the idea that you might have this whole lighting system to draw from, and you know, and because I'm actually a multimedia artist, so I do some film, and so I eventually would like to utilize all of that in a performance without it taking over. Just have it, you know, organic and add a little drama. So I do like the theater, but it's nice to go to like you know, a famous jazz club and then really put on a smoking show where other like awesome artists have, you know, graced the stage. That's exciting too.
Where you know there's other echoes of their performances coming out of the walls.
Well, it's all energy that's still around. You know, it's pretty incredible.
What's coming up for you in terms of plans, recordings, performances? I see from Facebook, which you don't use all that often.
I know.
But other people use it on your behalf.
I know. They're like, Chantal, let's help you out with this. Yes, hopefully someday I will join the 2019 social media. Okay, so I have April 14th is Jazz Appreciation Day that we've the Musicians Union and lots of hardworking people have organized. I will be closing that. It's not really a day; it's actually a night. They sort of got half their budget, so it turned from a day to a night. But I think it starts about 5 p.m. I'll be on it from 9 to 10.
Where's
doing
this?
a set at Blue Martini.
Okay.
April 14th. Then I'll be in Homegrown. So Joe's Mill. It's a big fundraiser for Joe's Mill that we talked about earlier. And that's May 4th. And I think I'll be at Sizzle at like 5 p.m. And what's after that? There's some other stuff coming up, but I guess I'll just learn how to post it. I know how to post it.
Just got to get the time
I'm just
to
like
post
a private person.
We have run out of time on the show.
Okay.
And I thank you very much for coming in. I've enjoyed our conversation.
Dave. Me too.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And all the best.
You too.
Theme music for the program is Stasis Oasis, a tune written and performed by Kingston musician Tim Aylesworth. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions about any of our episodes, please send a note to the Kingstonian Podcast Facebook page. This is Dave Cunningham from Kingston, Ontario. Thank you for listening. Until next time.